Evelyn Moore was 32 years old, a quiet, thoughtful art history professor at a small community college in Oregon. On the day we meet her, she stood in silence at the foot of a freshly dug grave, her dark coat fluttering in the October wind. A granite headstone shimmered with dew, etched with ivy patterns, and the name of the woman who had been more than a grandmother, Dorothy Moore. Dorothy had raised Evelyn since she was 6 years old, after a car accident claimed her parents. From bedtime stories to school projects, Dorothy had never let the child feel the weight of her loss. Over the years, Evelyn grew into a capable, compassionate woman, and she stayed. She didn't go away for college. She didn't take the job offers out of state. She remained by Dorothy's side, especially during the last few years, when arthritis, memory lapses, and heart complications became part of daily life. At the funeral, Evelyn spoke with composure, painting her grandmother's legacy in vivid detail. She talked about Dorothy's passion for antiques, her love for faded jazz records, and how she used to find beauty in chipped teacups no one else would touch. When the last guest had left, Evelyn remained at the gravesite alone, whispering a soft goodbye into the cold air. Returning to the small apartment she shared with her husband, Michael, Evelyn's mind was wrapped in grief, but her phone call jolted her. The voice on the line was firm and professional. "Ms. Moore, this is Leonard Price. I was your grandmother's attorney. She left a will, and I'd like to schedule a meeting to go over its contents with you." Evelyn blinked, surprised. Dorothy had lived modestly. Their bungalow was filled with second-hand furniture and memories, not wealth. A will was unexpected, but curiosity nudged through the fog of grief. The next morning she found herself in a quiet downtown office that smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Leonard, an older man with kind eyes, handed her a sealed envelope. "Your grandmother left this for you. She wanted you to read it first." Evelyn stared at the delicate script bearing her name. As she unfolded the paper, her eyes filled with tears. The letter was filled with love, gratitude, and pride, a reminder that even in death Dorothy's care didn't stop. Evelyn clutched the paper to her chest, feeling the loss and the love all at once. The office was quiet except for the soft tick of a vintage clock on the wall. Leonard Price gave Evelyn a moment to gather herself after reading the letter. She wiped her eyes, still holding the page close to her heart, and whispered, "Thank you." "I'm not finished yet," Leonard said gently, sliding a second folder toward her. "Your grandmother also left you something else." Evelyn opened the folder, expecting perhaps a piece of jewelry, or maybe the deed to the bungalow. Instead, she saw numbers, big ones. $2.7 million? She said aloud, disbelieving. Leonard nodded. She invested wisely over the years. Antique sales, small stock purchases, some property. Your grandmother was incredibly frugal, but she was also incredibly smart. And everything she had, she wanted you to have. Evelyn sat back in the chair, stunned. She never mentioned any of this. "We used to budget groceries down to the cent. I thought she was barely getting by." "She lived simply," Leonard agreed. "But never out of necessity. She wanted to make sure you never had to struggle. That was her way." Evelyn's thoughts raced. For years she had juggled teaching, part-time tutoring, late-night grading sessions. She and Michael had been saving for a house, hoping one day they'd have enough to move out of their tiny apartment. They talked about maybe starting a family, opening an art studio for local kids. But all those dreams were distant. They always had to wait for the right time. Now, in a single moment, everything had changed. Walking out of Leonard's office with the manila envelope and a framed photo of her and Dorothy tucked under her arm, Evelyn felt both overwhelmed and quietly exhilarated. She wasn't thinking about shopping sprees or luxury vacations. She was thinking of a modest home with a small garden, maybe even a dog. She was thinking about freedom. On the bus ride home, her heart beat with excitement. She thought of how Michael would react. He always talked about quitting his job at the construction firm and launching his own design studio. This inheritance could finally make that possible. A fresh start. A shared dream realized. By the time she stepped onto the sidewalk in front of their apartment building, the autumn air smelled different, hopeful, lighter somehow. Evelyn climbed the stairs 3 at a time, smiling to herself. She imagined Michael wrapping her in a hug, laughing at the miracle of it all. She imagined them planning the future together, hand in hand. But as she reached the door, her world began to tilt. Inside, she heard voices, Michael's low murmur and another sharper one. She froze, her hand resting lightly on the doorknob. It was his sister Heather, and what she was saying made Evelyn's blood run cold. "You need to move fast before Evelyn gets any ideas." Heather's voice rang out clearly through the thin apartment door. "That kind of money doesn't sit untouched for long." Evelyn froze. She hadn't told anyone about the inheritance yet. How did they even know? I know, Michael replied, sounding hesitant. But she's my wife. I can't just take it. Heather scoffed. You don't need to steal it, Mike. Just play it smart. There's no prenup, right? Technically, half is already yours. But why stop at half? Get her to open a joint account. I'll draft the paperwork clean, simple. Once the funds are transferred, you're free. Free, Michael repeated, his voice quieter. To start over, Heather continued, as if reading from a script. Find someone better suited for you. Younger. Someone who doesn't drag you down with night classes and art lectures. You could finally open that studio you've been whining about for years. Buy a house. Live the life you deserve. Evelyn's heart slammed in her chest. Silence hung in the air. Then Michael spoke again, and it broke her. You're right, he said slowly. I've played the good husband long enough. With that money, I could finally have something for myself. The folder slipped in Evelyn's grip, her knuckles white. She felt the hallway spin around her. The man she had loved, sacrificed for, built a life with was planning to betray her for money she didn't even know existed a day ago. A part of her wanted to barge in and scream, to throw the door open and confront them both, her pain unleashed in a flood of fury. But she didn't. Instead, Evelyn did something much harder. She took a breath. Then she turned, walked silently back down the stairs, and stepped outside into the chill of the evening. The sidewalk was quiet. The street lamps flickered. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone and dialed the one person who had always answered without judgment. Lena, she said, her voice barely holding steady. I need to see you. It's Michael. Lena didn't ask questions. Come over, now. In the back seat of the taxi, Evelyn clutched the folder to her chest like a shield. Her thoughts spun in 100 directions, but one thing became clear: Dorothy's gift wasn't just money. It was clarity. It was a chance to see people for who they really were. And tonight, she saw Michael with eyes wide open. At Lena's warm apartment, Evelyn told her everything. Lena listened in stunned silence, then narrowed her eyes. That's disgusting, she said at last. You can't go back there. He's dangerous. I have to, Evelyn said quietly. If I disappear, he'll know I heard. I need time to figure this out, to protect myself. Lena grabbed her hand. Then we make a plan. But you're not doing this alone. The next morning, Evelyn returned to the apartment as if nothing had happened. She walked up the same stairs, turned the same doorknob, and stepped into the same kitchen where Michael was pouring coffee like any ordinary Tuesday. There you are, he said cheerfully, handing her a mug. Missed you last night. Everything okay at Lena's? She smiled tightly. Yeah, just lost track of time. She watched him over the rim of her cup, trying to find the man she once loved. But every gesture now felt rehearsed. Every smile, too eager. Every glance, too measured. He was playing the role of a devoted husband while quietly plotting to take everything. That afternoon, Evelyn kept her appointment with the attorney Lena had recommended, Vincent Gregory. His office was crisp, modern, with tall windows and shelves lined with thick legal books. She recounted everything. The conversation she overheard. The money. The fear. The betrayal. Vincent listened without interruption. When she finished, he leaned forward and said calmly, legally, that inheritance is yours and yours alone. It's not considered marital property, unless you commingle it like putting it into a joint account. As long as it stays separate, he has no claim. Evelyn exhaled, relief loosening her shoulders for the first time since the funeral. But be careful, Vincent added. If he's already thinking like a thief, he may act like one. Change every password. Bank accounts, email, even your phone security. Don't leave anything vulnerable. That night, while Michael was in the shower, Evelyn sat on the edge of their bed and got to work. She updated all her passwords, enabled two-step verification, and moved her documents into encrypted storage. She felt like a spy in her own home, but there was no other way. She couldn't confront him, not yet. She had to be smarter. In the days that followed, Evelyn kept up the performance. She played the role of the grateful wife. She smiled, laughed, kissed his cheek, listened to his stories. And all the while, she watched. She took mental notes. She noticed how often he brought up the money. Have you thought about what to do with it yet? He asked one evening, folding laundry with exaggerated care. Still thinking, she replied lightly. Another night over dinner, he said casually. We should talk to a financial advisor. Or better yet, just open a joint account. That way we can start planning together. Evelyn blinked slowly, nodding. Maybe. I'll look into it. She could feel his anticipation every time she delayed. The flicker of frustration in his eyes, quickly hidden behind a forced grin. She thought of Dorothy every time she needed strength. Her grandmother's soft voice whispering bedtime stories. Her warm hands guiding Evelyn through every hard moment of her childhood. The sacrifices she made giving up her career, her independence to raise a grieving little girl. Evelyn had always believed love was about showing up, about staying when things got hard. But now she understood something deeper. Love was also about protection. And it was time to protect herself. Quietly, she contacted a realtor Lena knew and arranged to rent a small, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, just safe, just hers. She packed little by little. Important papers, jewelry, a few clothes, Dorothy's framed photo. Everything else could wait. After Evelyn casually mentioned to Michael that her grandmother had left her an inheritance, his demeanor shifted, but not in the way she might have hoped. He didn't ask how she was feeling. He didn't offer condolences again. What he did was smile broad, bright, and just a little too fast. "Babe, that's unbelievable," he said, eyes wide with performative joy. 2.7 million. We're set. We can buy that house we've been dreaming about. I can finally quit my job and open that studio. We can even take that trip to Italy, remember?" Evelyn nodded slowly, the corners of her mouth lifting just enough. "It's a lot. I still can't believe it." Over the next few days, Michael transformed into a version of himself she hadn't seen in years. He brought home her favorite hazelnut creamer. He offered to rub her shoulders after work. He even folded laundry without being asked. He was the perfect husband, almost too perfect. At first, Evelyn wanted to believe it was genuine. That maybe, somehow, hearing about the inheritance made him realize how precious she was to him. But that illusion cracked fast. At dinner, he'd casually slide in questions like, did the lawyer say anything about how to access the money? Or wouldn't it make sense to open a joint account now, just to make things easier? Evelyn played her role carefully. "I'm still figuring things out," she'd say. "I might meet with a financial advisor first." Michael's smile would tighten ever so slightly. His fingers would tap against his glass a little too fast. He was losing patience, and she could feel it. One night, as they sat on the couch, watching an old movie they'd both seen a dozen times, Michael turned to her. "You trust me, right?" he asked. Evelyn kept her eyes on the screen. "Of course." "Then what's the holdup? We're married. We should be planning this together." She turned to him then, her face calm. "And we will. I just want to do it right. It's a lot of money. I need time to process." He nodded, but his jaw flexed. "Sure. Just don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't last forever." That night, lying in bed beside him, Evelyn stared up at the ceiling. His arm draped over her waist like a claim, not a comfort. Everything he did now felt like performance, like strategy. She thought of Dorothy again. Of the way her grandmother once said, "People will show you who they are when they think you're not looking." And now she was looking. Clearly. The mask Michael wore was slipping. And Evelyn was done pretending not to see. The final piece of Evelyn's quiet plan was almost in place. Each evening, while Michael chattered about home renovations and startup plans, she mentally cataloged the things she needed to move. Not everything, just what mattered. The framed photo of Dorothy, important documents, her laptop, jewelry, and enough clothes to start over. She didn't pack boxes. That would raise suspicion. Instead, she slipped 1 or 2 items into her tote bag each day, taking them with her to work and storing them at Lena's. Meanwhile, she paid the deposit for her new apartment. A small, second-floor unit overlooking the river. Quiet, modest, hers. There was no doorman, no marble countertop, no sleek appliances, but it smelled like freedom. Then came the morning she knew it was time. Michael had left early for a site meeting. Evelyn stood in their bedroom, staring at the closet they once shared. It felt more like a stage now. Everything rehearsed, everything fake. She left her wedding ring on the nightstand. Her key on the kitchen counter. And a letter. It wasn't long or emotional. She didn't owe him that. "Michael. I know everything. I heard you and Heather. You can stop pretending. I'm not coming back. Don't try to find me. You already lost me. Evelyn." She locked the door behind her one last time and walked down the hallway with a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Later that afternoon, Michael called. Then again. Then again. Text came next. Where are you? Are you okay? Please talk to me. When she didn't respond, the tone shifted. You're being dramatic. This isn't what you think. You can't just take off like this. Then, silence. She expected rage, maybe even legal threats. But what came was nothing. And that was its own kind of peace. At her new apartment, Evelyn unpacked slowly. She set the photo of Dorothy on the windowsill, brewed herself a cup of tea, sat down in the silence and let herself feel it all. The betrayal. The grief. The relief. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just breathed. For the first time in what felt like years, no one was watching her, no one was manipulating her, no one was demanding her loyalty while plotting behind her back. She was free. And that freedom? It was worth more than any inheritance. Weeks passed, and Evelyn's new life began to take shape, not in grand gestures, but in quiet, steady moments. She taught her classes, graded papers, walked to the market on Saturdays. Her apartment smelled like fresh coffee and lavender. She planted succulents on the windowsill and hung paintings from her students on the walls. She read in bed without someone asking when the lights would go off. She slept deeply for the first time in years. The money, for now, stayed untouched. She didn't need it to feel rich. But she did use a portion of it to set up something that mattered: the Dorothy Fund. A small scholarship for underprivileged students pursuing art or design, especially those being raised by grandparents. She didn't announce it with press releases or plaques. It was quiet, like Dorothy, like everything that had saved her life. Sometimes Evelyn would walk down by the river at dusk, feeling the cold air nip at her cheeks. She'd imagine what Dorothy might say if she were still here. You finally chose you, Evelyn would whisper, a soft smile touching her lips. And you didn't need to scream to be heard. As for Michael, she heard through a mutual acquaintance that things hadn't gone well for him. The design studio never happened. Heather had been involved in a legal dispute at her firm. The world they built out of schemes and entitlement had started to unravel. But Evelyn didn't celebrate that. She didn't need to. Her victory wasn't in someone else's downfall. It was in the quiet power of walking away. Of choosing dignity over drama. Of saving herself. One morning, as she stood by the window sipping coffee, a student sent her a message. Professor Moore, thank you. I was awarded the Dorothy Fund. I didn't think I'd ever be able to go to art school. You've changed my life. Evelyn pressed a hand to her heart, and for the first time in a long time, she cried. Not from grief, not from fear, but from healing. From knowing that even the most painful endings can lead to something profoundly beautiful. From understanding that the strongest kind of revenge isn't loud. It's rebuilding in silence. And rising again and again with grace. Not all revenge needs to be loud. Sometimes it's choosing silence over shouting, grace over chaos, a fresh start over wasted explanations. Evelyn didn't fight to win him back. She didn't beg to be understood. She simply walked away with her truth, her peace, and her power intact. And that, more than anything, is what real strength looks like. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, remember Evelyn. You don't have to destroy them. You just have to stop letting them destroy you. And when you finally choose yourself, that's when you win. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments, what does freedom look like for you? Because here on The Art of Revenge, we believe the best revenge is living well with truth, dignity, and no regrets.